Welcome back. Tony Garcia giving us some fantastic shots there of the 54A of the Okra. 2 Okras involved in the next group race, getting ready in the Parc Ferme in the pre-grid, as we call it. There's the other one. The number 54 of Chris Ronson Jr. in the Okra FLM 09. So really looking forward to seeing these 2 race. This is our Group 5A, 7 and 11. And we've really got some fantastic race cars in this, including one of my favorites, the number 72 of John Mulaney in that Ford GT. You can't beat a Ford GT, come on. 98 is James Farley, his second run. MD of Ford Motor Company in a Lola, which counts. So, no answers on a postcard. Thumbs up from him. Got a Ford engine. Okay, so the 70 coming up here is David Jans in the 70A, to be precise, the Harvey Riley AR2. And that looks like a beast, doesn't it? Splendidly repaired as always, but there's some really, really nice history out here in this group. And also the 82 of Hobart Buppet in the Lola T70 Mark III. And the little number 14 of John Thompson in the little Lola. Very nice indeed. And I'm delighted to be welcomed into the booth our TA2 champion, Mike Skeen. Hello, Mike. What brings you hither? You know a little bit about these SVR racing. Mike is our current TA2 champion, won here at Sebring last year. But you like watching these races, and I know when I said, hey, can you come up? You said, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll come up now to watch these because I know a little bit about them.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I've coached a fair number of the cars in SVRA, have plenty of clients, and, you know, I just enjoy the vintage cars. They're a blast, you know, the raw, very cool cars, so it's a fun time to watch.
We'll talk about that for a little bit because you're right. I was just saying what beasts some of these cars are, and the point is, not anybody can drive these. Now, a lot of the gentleman drivers who may have the wherewithal to buy one may not know and have the wherewithal to actually drive one or enjoy driving one. I don't think anybody couldn't drive one, but what I mean is to go racing with one that is literally a piece of history. You don't want to damage it, you don't want to hurt it, you don't want to ruin the gearbox. So what do you do as a professional driver when you meet somebody who says, look, Mike, I want to learn how to drive this fast? What do you do?
Yeah, for sure. You know, a lot of these cars are very intimidating, lots of power. And maybe not a great benchmark for what the absolute performance of them is. So, you know, a lot of these guys just want to know what the car will do. See somebody, you know, a little bit more capable, go out and try the limits and show them that it is capable, that it's stable at these speeds or whatever, and that gives them a little bit more confidence to go out and try it themselves and enjoy it, you know, without being too afraid of it.
Well, Mike, tell us a little bit about your off-season, because you are our current TA2 champion, and you did it in style last year. It was an absolute joy to watch you, and you finished it off so nicely too at Road Atlanta with a really, really impressive show. What's been going on in your winter, and how are you set fair for this year?
Yeah, it seems like it's been really short. You know, I've been at the track a lot, doing a lot of coaching, doing some testing. I ran the Rolex Daytona 24 and the Michelin Pilot Race at Daytona. And, you know, I've been down here already a couple days this year doing some testing, working with Junior 3 Racing, which, you know, has some SVRA vintage customers here this weekend, but they also have a IMSA Prototype Challenge team with 2 cars, so we've been doing some testing with those. Been to Roebling Road for a bunch of days doing some testing. So, yeah, it's been on track quite a bit already. Seems like a short off season, but at the same time seems like a long time since I've been in a TA2 car. So it was fun to get back behind the wheel of that today.
I was going to say, how was it? Any problems going into your qualifying this afternoon?
It's hard to know. You know, it's always an uncertainty about, you know, what the performance of the competition is. You know, we kind of know what we have maybe still in reserve, but we don't know what everybody else does. So, you know, I think we'll have a strong car and we'll be somewhere near the front, but it's hard to know exactly where we'll land. I think, you know, there's a lot of strong competition, both returning guys and new guys, and so we're looking forward to that.
Mike, you know, you obviously see the SVRA on a regular basis, and there's a heck of a bunch of cars to pick from. Is there any one you think to yourself, I really want to drive that car because I like it, or it's a challenge, or it's just something that is from your youth or, you know, your knowledge, and you just say, I really want to have a go at that?
Yeah, I mean, the list is just so long. You know, it's for a car guy, this is one of the greatest types of events to go to because you get to see all these old cars in action. Certainly, there's a bunch like that Audi R8 prototype you just saw on the screen that, you know, I kind of grew up watching at Le Mans. And, so, you know, those kind of things would be incredibly exciting. I've actually been on track a little bit with that one and some various vintage endurance races and stuff. So it's cool to see that in action, but to be behind the wheel would be really cool. But there's, you know, tons of old Porsches and sports racers and all kinds of stuff here that would just be incredible to experience.
Now, talking of endurance races, am I right in saying that you were at Daytona this year?
Yep, that's right.
How did you go?
Not bad. So actually, the 24, I found out about an hour before the race that I was going to be in the race.
No way!
Got the call, and I was actually in New Orleans. I had flown from the Michelin Pilot race I had done at Daytona on Friday, flown to New Orleans for a different race, got a call to come back for the 24, so started my way back and made it there during the race, and was able to get my drive time in towards the end of the race there at Daytona, but ran the Allegra Motorsports AMG Mercedes GT3.
Well, listen, when we get these guys out on track, I want you to tell me, because you've been out there today, I want you to tell me a little bit about some of the nuances about Sebring. Everybody talks about it in glowing terms because of the 12 hours and because of the history here. But let's face it, it is an airfield. It's very bumpy. There's bits of concrete, bits of racetrack. The layout itself hasn't changed dramatically since the 50s. But why is it such a driver's track? Why do they like it so much? As we look at, before I let you in, the number 98 being pushed to a start. Let's see if he gets going. Maybe I'll try. But what is it about this track? It's James Farley who's come to a conk, of all people, in the Lola 298. What is it about this track, though?
Yeah, it's just that, there's so many subtleties to it. You would think with it being fairly flat and, nothing about it being too dramatically unusual. There's not lots of elevation change or anything, and not a lot of camber changes or anything, but there's so many pavement changes and bumps, and it changes every year, with new pavement and stuff put down for different patches and stuff. So every time you come here, it seems a little bit different, just the way the weather reacts on different pieces of pavement differently. Sometimes the concrete may not react the same way as the asphalt in the sun and that sort of thing, so the brake zones can be different every time you're out, that sort of thing. But it's just, it looks simple on paper, but when you get out there and the car is jumping over bumps, it makes it a little more difficult.
Yeah, and I would have thought in a TA or TA2 car, I was talking to Ken Thwaites this morning, who's just jumped into his TA car for the first time. He said that the setup, he improved in his first session by over 5 seconds, because at first the car was bouncing and jumping and it was like a go-kart, and of course it was getting wheel spin because it was jumping, and you've really got to dial it in where it sticks to the road and does what you want rather than just kind of bounces around, right?
Yep, absolutely. Compliance is one of the biggest things to work on here with the setup, making sure the car will absorb those bumps a little bit, and that gives you the confidence as a driver to push, even if maybe the balance isn't necessarily inherently more grip, mid-corner. If it's just compliant over the bumps and can keep the car and the tires on the ground a little bit more, that'll certainly make you a little bit quicker around here.
Well, as we go racing, I'll ask you for a little bit about strategy in terms of attacking this circuit too. And I realise that this is historic racing, so it's not as aggressive as what you do, but it's always interesting to learn a little bit about this track and actually get a perspective of how you go racing here at Sebring, because I'm sure you've done a fair few thousand miles around here, haven't you?
Yep, absolutely.
There's James Farley. And I think they're standing in front of him because they are going to let him out, but he's just going to have to wait. So they've got him going, and he'll start from the pit lane, so that won't bother him. He just wants to go racing.
Yep, hopefully he can have some battles trying to come up through the field. Sometimes that's the most enjoyable, when you can get back, start at the back of the pack. I had that opportunity last year at VIR in the TA2 race, and
remember it well.
Certainly had a good time trying to battle my way up to the front.
How important was that victory last year for you?
Yeah, it was a big one for sure. The first weekend with the Mustang and a home track for me, so we had kind of a disappointing first race, and fortunately for us, we had that double header, so we had a second chance on the weekend to go for a good finish. But let's go ahead and jump. It looks like they're about ready to get started.
They're about ready
here,
to
going
coming to Sunset Bend, and the two the Audi and the two Oricas right there as we start our coverage of Group 5A, 7 and 11. Jonathan Green, along with our TA2 champion, Mike Skeen, getting ready for the action. And here comes the front straight for the start of this one. The Audi will lead them away. The green flag waves. And a good start from the Orica, though. Very good start. I think he got the jump on him. We'll soon find out as they dive into the left-hander. But the Audi gets it back. The number 2 Audi of Travis Engen, who of course was in the last race as well. Good start though as they dive through 3. First complex and the first chance to overtake into 3. And no doing there. It's a little bit of
somebody's off
fisticuffs. Somebody's gone wide. Somebody went for it. But already the Audi and the Orica, yes it was the number 3 that has gone off. Dominic in Catapulpo. Or is that James Matthews? But the number 2 coming to the hairpin, and pretty much as expected. That is a beautiful car, that Audi, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And amazing, how much performance it gets out of, such what is an old car these days, but it is obviously still hanging well with a prototype challenge car, one of the recent PC cars that would have run in IMSA.
Yeah. And it had a very successful Le Mans campaign over the years, and of course in IMSA it was just immaculate. It was unstoppable. And it dates back to 2005. And we've got quite a variance out there, back to 67. We've got the odd Ginetta out there. But that's a real shame to see James Matthews parked up in that GT40. That would be the car I would take out. And if he's parked up and doesn't want to drive it, I'll take it out. So let's hear a bit about this track, Mike. First and foremost, if you were starting a race, rolling start, your first, I mentioned it there, the first real overtake opportunity is at 3, right?
Yeah, you want to keep it clean through turn 1, try to kind of finish off any pass you might have attempted or started it before turn 1. But certainly turn 3 is where it all kind of funnels down. You have to go single file. And then, once everybody gets kind of single file there, the next opportunity would be the hairpin at turn 7, 10, and then, pretty much back to 17 and 1. You know? So you've got a few straightaways here where you can set it up, and occasionally you can sneak in a pass elsewhere on the course, but certainly those are the easiest ones to set it up and get it done.
A glimpse there of the 07 going through shot. The only single-seated car we have, but it's Engen in his second race of the day, ahead of Ronson Jr. in Catalupo in 3rd place, Mucha in 4th, and Thompson at the moment in 5th. John Thompson in the Lola 90, the all-orange car, as we take a look at the 82 of Hobart Bubbett in the Lola T70. That's a beautiful looking car too, that Lola, isn't it?
Yeah, those are amazing. Stuff in the big V8 in the back of that little tiny car. Would have taken quite a bit to manhandle around and get all the speed out of. I'm not sure I could even fit in one of those at 6'3".
Yeah, we were just talking about the history of Trans Am and how the European small board cars came over and were so nimble that they started beating the Americans. And so the Americans started putting muscle in. And that's how the muscle car wars started, as it were. But then you get Lola, and they think, all right, well, we got to put a big engine in it. That's it. It's V8, it's V8. We'll do that.
There's no replacement for this place.
There you go. That's what they say. Out of the hairpin, down the Fangio straight then. Beautiful conditions. Mike Skeen and Jonathan Green bringing the action of Group 5A and 7 and 11. Which car would you pick if you had to go into this group to drive around to enjoy?
Man, it would probably be that GT40 if I could fit in it. Next, maybe best would be that GT, because I suspect the newer car, a little bit more room to work in. I might fit into that one.
There you go. Or try something completely obscure that you've never tried before. Something that is just sort of off the wall that you have no idea how it handles. I wouldn't know how these handle, for example.
Yeah, these are the S2000 cars. I have a lot of friends that have run them. Certainly a lot of performance out of tiny little engines, and man, they're getting it after it here. A little bit of rubbing going into the Bishop's Bend.
It's supposed to be historic racing, but they were rubbing there. I like it. So Engen continues to lead. At the moment, his gap 1.5 seconds. He's going to be a busy boy out there. This is his second race in a row. So I don't know how he gets the podium.
That car is not exactly a Cadillac to drive around here.
No.
Pretty, bumpy over all these bumps, and certainly a lot of G-force, lots of downforce. So a little bit of an Ironman workout there going after back-to-back sessions.
I was watching the 12 hours of Sebring from 1970 the other day. And of course, if you squint your eyes, you can almost be back there at the moment. We've got several cars from the late 60s and early 70s out there, and people like Steve McQueen and Formula One stars of the day were out there. It was awesome to watch. Really, really, really good. And some of the superstars, Dan Gurney, of course. Everybody back then. Everybody came to the 12 hours, and it didn't matter whether you were an unknown or you were a Formula One star. You were just treated the same.
Yep, absolutely. Racers are racers, and once you get on the track, it doesn't matter where you came from. It's all about trying to reach that finish line first.
Yeah, the funniest part of that whole thing was Steve McQueen was racing with a broken leg, with a broken ankle after falling off a motorcycle. But that was so Steve McQueen. And they finished on the podium.
Wow.
Great stuff. So Engen leads from Ronson Jr. Catalupo in third place at the moment. In this, our third group race, they have 2 feature races of the day. And of course, Mike Skeen will be in action for, it's going to be a good little qualifying session, yours, and an important one too. I was looking at the times this morning in practice. It's tight.
Yep, very tight. Always as expected in TA2 racing. And, the practice sessions have been kind of mixed up. It hasn't been the same cars up front the whole time. Obviously, Matos is quick. We expect him to be up in the fight. But there's a good 8 cars that could, really put in a vie for the, top spot. So it's anybody's game at this point. And certainly the race is going to be tough tomorrow. So everybody wants to be as close to the front as possible.
Just saw Chip Halverson going through there in the 93 Chevron as we go back to the leaders. And this is starting to warm up into a nice race. Travis Engen leading, but not by a great deal. Chris Ronson keeping him absolutely honest as they dive through turn 1 and 2 and into the complex high above it into 3, which is the trickiest corner. This looks like it would be a challenge, this 6th section here.
Yeah, 3 and 4 are really tricky, just the way it tightens up so much there, and the curbs are really high, especially in a prototype car like this. You really can't take advantage of those curbs. They'll kind of unsettle the car a little bit, so you have to be careful to kind of thread the needle there and set up for 5, which obviously sets up an important run down to turn 7, one of our best passing zones here.
David Yance in the Riley AR2, bright orange, can't miss that. Going well, trying to see where he is. And Farley has got out there. James Farley, the man who got stuck in the pre-grid. He's up in 6th place at the moment overall after starting at the back. But he's pulled it all together. 8 minutes to go, or just over, in this our race. We've got a good battle at the front between the 2 fastest cars out there in Travis Engen in the Audi and Chris Ronson Jr. Dominic in Catalupo is in 3rd position. And Jacek Mucha is in 4th at the moment. Hobart Pupat is in 5th place, and James Farley, as I mentioned, in 6th. John Mulaney 7th, John Thompson 8th, and Kurt Leverton in 9th position ahead of John Vauxhall. So have you coached any of the drivers out there at the moment?
I don't think so. Some of these cars are familiar, I've raced against them or been on track with them, but none of these particular drivers have been clients of mine. But we see a little bit of traffic maybe playing a factor for some of the GTB2 cars as the 3 GT40 is back into the fight, of course. Good to see him back on track after that lap 1 incident, spinning off.
Now, let me put you in the Orica's position here, in the number 54 of Chris Ronson. How would you go about trying to eke out some time? Because this is a healthy gap that the Audi has built up. So where, if anywhere, can you make up time in this circuit?
Boy, it's tough. Certainly there are some high commitment corners, the faster ones like turn 1, breaking into 17. Those are tricky ones in these downforce cars. You can really push the limit very deep, but it's also high commitment, so you don't want to see any problems there, but those are certainly spots where you can make up some time. Looks like we got the 70 car, the LMP3 Ave Riley in the pits.
Yeah, I just saw him burst down, and he came down, David Gans, and the Ave looking a little bit sorry for itself. But yeah, I suppose as we take a look at the pits, the hairpin is obvious, possibly into Fangio, but it's such a tight corner that once you commit, you're probably going to end up at the other end of it, on the wrong end of it, right?
That's right, yep. So, obviously there are little bits and pieces to get throughout the track, but, I wouldn't be surprised if that Audi's just kind of playing with running a pace to keep a little bit of a comfortable gap there and not push himself too hard. Again, we said he just, came from another race, so he's probably just trying to save himself a little bit at this point and make it to the finish.
I was just saying in the previous race that this complex here, before you get on the Almond Straight, looks like the most sort of tricky because it's very fast, and you've got to be fully committed because the apexes are almost flat out, right?
They're very quick, yep. Certainly the curves are pretty high, and turn 16 there going on to the Almond Straight is really critical. Obviously a good passing zone. You want to get as much exit speed as you can so that you can get a run down here into 17 and try to keep it as clean, maybe get a pass opportunity.
And where are the bumps? They look like they're everywhere.
They are kind of everywhere. There's a big one under the bridge there, about 2 sizable ones on the way out to the track out. So you want to try to keep those, keep the car as straight as you can as you're adding power and going over those to get a good run off onto the front straightaway.
A 2:00.078 by Travis Engen on lap 5. That's the fastest lap time so far. That's pretty quick. But the man behind him, Chris Ronson Jr., also doing a good 2:00.7. So not a lot between them, especially at this stage of the race. But down comes the 54 of Dominic Incantalupo, and that's the first time we've seen him. He's in 3rd place at the moment. Behind him, Jacek Mucha, and Mucha in the 07, Swift 016, and this the man in 3rd place. There he is. 2 Oricas, as I mentioned at the start, involved in this race, but it's the Audi R8 LMS that leads the way at the moment. 4 minutes or just over to go in this one. And this is the 3rd race in our SVRA coverage, day 1 of the weekend here at Sebring. And I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Skeen. And I know that a certain Thomas Merrill may be gunning for you this weekend. He was in a dramatic race. He got the lead last year in that race and came to naught. I think it was at turn 3, and that just allowed you. You'd been hounding him all. I mean, you could say it was his mistake, but when you're on that closing stages, and same thing happened at Mid Ohio, and you got another opportunity there. But you take your luck in motor race.
Yeah, absolutely, and you set yourself up for what you get. You have to be there to take advantage of it. This being my first full race distance last year, I didn't really know what to expect with tire life and brake life and that sort of thing. So, we started on pole, led the first few laps, but then at that point, Thomas was really pushing hard, and he made a move to the lead, and I was happy to just follow him around. So we were basically trying to save the car and make sure we had something to fight with at the end, and I think we had that. We had, we were in a position to battle it out, but he kind of handed it to us. So I'm sure he's, trying to make up for it, as he would be any weekend, of course. But we're going to go out and try to maintain the level we've been at all throughout 2020.
That's what we want to hear. Well, we've got a great finish to this one. This is the final lap, and it looked as though as they crossed the line, Chris Ronson Jr. was really putting the heavyweight pressure on our leader as through goes the 54. Now, the 3rd place man, and that is Dominic in 3rd. But the leaders at the moment in a good battle, because Travis Engen has led the whole way in that Audi, but the Chris Ronson car I saw had the lights flashing and blazing, and so we are looking for, here we go, we are looking for a real grandstand finish. And where, Mike Skeen, you call it, can the 2nd place man Ronson make his move? Where would you do it?
Yeah, at this point his best bet's into turn 17. He's really close going into Bishop's Bend. Hopefully he can keep it tight, be right on the back diffuser of that Audi coming out of turn 16 and get a good draft down to 17 to put the pressure on. He is right there, definitely putting the pressure on now. This is the closest we've seen them in the whole race.
Yeah, like you say, would you go for a block pass up the exit of Ullman? You get the run and maybe get a drag on him and then move to the inside. But we've seen, we saw a Ferrari spin there because of the bumps early on. How would you play it?
The tricky part, as we see some traffic, and he's going looking for the inside, but there's also a lot of debris to the inside, lots of marbles, so you don't want to collect too much dirt, but man, they're getting parked behind this S2000 car.
Oh, and he's got to the inside! Oh, that was brilliantly done by Ronson! He didn't need the bumps to help him. He used the back marker to his advantage, and that was really impressive. Great finish to that one, and Ronson does it well. That's a nice little trick.
That was quite an impressive run.
Very impressive. He, like you say, you called it, because the back marker did come into play for Chris Ronson there. And at the last corner at Sunset Bend, he took him. Excellent stuff.
So here we can see, as we look down the straightaway, all those marbles off to the left side and in the foreground. That's why you don't want to go down to the inside too early and collect all that. But he was fortunate to have that lap car as they entered turn 17, slow him up and split him.
Really good stuff. Chris Ronson, in the dying moments of that race, takes victory over Travis Engen, who does his back-to-back races. Dominic in Cantalupo in third place, and Jacek Mucha in fourth. Hobart Bupa in fifth position. But that was a great finish. SVRA racers tend to be a little bit staid in comparison, but look at this. He took the normal line, got stuck a little bit, had to go to the outside. There was no choice, and Ronson said, well, if you're going to do that, I'll take the inside, thank you very much. And that's all he needed. So, Mike, where can we see you this afternoon? And give the world your details so that they know who to tune into. You're our champion.
Yep, that's right. You can follow us on myself and Mike Skeen Racing on pretty much all the platforms: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Stevens Miller Racing, of course, Liqui USA, Turn 14 Distribution. All of those have platforms putting out lots of social media. And, of course, we'll be live streaming from my car, the #1 Chevy Camaro, on the Trans Am app, so everybody can catch it there as well. And we'll be out in qualifying in just a little bit and then racing tomorrow morning.
Look forward to it. You're listening to Mike Skeen, who, as you say, looking for the third in a row title for the team that is Stevens Miller Racing. So we look out to watch them later. My thanks to Mike, but a cracking race there in our third of the day in SVRA, won by Chris Ronson Jr. over Travis Engen. Dominic Incantalupo in third place, but that was a really good race, and it all took off on that final lap when Ronson decided to up the pace and have a go. There we go then. Confirmation of the result of Groups 5A, 7 and 11. Chris Ronson Jr., Travis Engen, Dominic in Cantalupo, and Hobart Bubbert in fourth position. John Mullaney in fifth. Jacek Mucha, sixth place. John Thompson. Kurt Leverton in eighth. John Boxhorn in ninth. And Chip Halverson in 10th position. That's how they rounded out in that Chevron B36 in the top 10.